Cubs shut out again, and it's been a big issue for this team this season. I'm going to get into why I think that the Cubs really have had one big issue scoring runs in close games. We're going to talk about Anthony Rizzo, one of the great Cubs returning. You love him. I love him. We're going to get into that. And then the fact that there's 20 games left and the Cubs are out of it for all intents and purposes. But there's another season coming dead ahead. I know that's not what you want to hear. But look, you're still better than the Cardinals. Like and subscribe. Give us a thumbs up. Let's get this thing going. Go Cubs. What do you say, everybody? Mick Gillespie, thanks for joining on this channel, the Cubs Baseball channel. Like and follow, subscribe, share with your friends as we start to head towards the end of the regular season and, honestly, the off year and what the Cubs are going to do in the off season. Today, you saw it. I saw it. Cubs fans saw it. Another loss for the Cubs. And I don't know how you can get on TV and sugarcoat it. The team just has issues. And they have a tough time scoring runs in close games. And I don't really understand why. My theory is that the team has trouble making adjustments in games and at bats. And I'm sure that Craig Counsell's looking at this and going, we're going to have to make some changes in the offseason. And he's probably going to bring in some coaches that kind of match his style. But maybe you need some different type of players too. And the tough part is you're going to have to make some deals because you got all these guys signed, through next year. So you may have to trade some guys to teams that are signed, and maybe you can do that. But right now with the position player, you got a catcher, the position player roster, you got catcher spot is open. Miguel Amaya battling right now his butt off to be on the team next year. I think that his spot is definitely up in the air. Christian Bethancourt has done everything to make a team think, hey, you know what? This guy's a pretty good backup. I mean, he's batting like 380 something, right? Since the Cubs signed him, and he's taking advantage of his opportunities. But your outfield's all signed up. Your infield's all signed from third to first, from left to right. So what are you going to do if you're the Cubs? I mean, you do have some spots on the bench. I don't think a lot of the bench players are going to be back next year. We've seen some of those guys go, and I think before the end of the season, that could continue. And then you bring up some of these young guys that are in AAA. We've talked about that team and the fact that they've got all their prospects pushed right up to the AAA level. What does that mean? Owen Casey had a couple more home runs, right fielder for the Iowa Cubs. I think he's the Cubs' best prospect right now. I envision an outfield with Pete Crow-Armstrong in center, Owen Casey in right. What about Kevin Alcantara? Look, the guy's got some issues with maturity, but he's definitely a talented player. Do you trade him? Do you keep him? Do you what do you do in that spot? And then all the infielders, BJ Murray, who's coming back from an injury and is currently with the AA team where he was the MVP of the championship series last year. Is he going to stay on the roster? They have the best record in baseball, or one of them. I mean, and it goes back and forth, but this is a team that was upwards of 31, 32, 33 games over 500. But it's a lot of veterans and journeymen and, and guys that I wouldn't consider prospects. At least they're not on the prospect list, but maybe some guys that can help you there. And some pitchers, certainly. But, what about James Triantos? What about Matt Shaw? So they have to decide what they're going to do with the young players, as they start to think about the next move. And do you feel like this team, this franchise, is a step away from contending for a World Series? I mean, even with today's loss to the Yankees, back-to-back shutouts, which, by the way, and I kind of digress for a second, and I'm going to swing back to that. 15 times they've been shut out this year. And how many times have I said, hey, when you get something going, you run into good pitching, this team just can't figure out a way to score. Sometimes you score with bunts. Sometimes you score with a single, you steal second, you roll a ground out to second base, and you get a sac fly, and you get on the board. You manufacture runs. They've had trouble doing it every which way that you could possibly score, they're having trouble doing it in certain games. But only one team in baseball has been shut out more than them, and that's the White Sox. And that's a shame, right? They've been shut out 16 times, the Cubs 15. And it's hard to win when you don't score runs. Oh, as a matter of fact, it's impossible to win in baseball when you don't score runs, or in football when you don't score points. So not scoring is never going to lead you to a win. And that's one of the issues that this Cubs team has definitely had. But when going back to the roster and what the moves are for next year, I mean, we've kind of gone over this before, but Michael Busch has had a really good rookie year. And I think everybody's satisfied with where he is right now and where he'll be next year. And that's at first base, right? Second base is Nico Horner. I mean, would you want to trade a Gold Glover? I mean, he's been pretty consistent this year. Dansby Swanson, hate to say it, but it's been a pretty big letdown at the plate for him. He's done some of the other stuff well, but you got to hit. When you get the 177 or whatever it is $1 million contract, they're expecting you to hit. He just hasn't hit. Isaac Paredes, since he's been traded, hasn't been that great. He's had some moments, but hasn't lived up to the all-star billing. Ian Happ, you can say what you want to say about Ian Happ. I know we've kind of had this debate on the channel, but a lot of the Cubs wins when they were struggling were big games by him. Cody Bellinger, is anyone going to pay him multi-year money after the season that he's had? Is his best bet going to be coming back to the 30 mil? I think it is. And I think he returns. Pete Crow-Armstrong, you're starting to see it now. And you guys can hammer me in the comment section because he's not batting, 260 or 270 yet. But he's been one of the Cubs' best players. I mean, I know he got thrown out today trying to steal, but he's trying to make things happen. And I mean, I feel like that's what when you're a speed guy like him and your team's not scoring, you want to do those things to make things happen. But, he's certainly on that list of players that I believe are going to be the future of the Cubs. And then Seiya Suzuki, I see him eventually being a DH and a platoon outfielder playing every day. But all in all, unless the Cubs make some changes, where do you put these young guys in? And that's going to be really the question that they have. And then you look at the pitching, where do you go there as well? But definitely one of the biggest disappointments of this season. And as the Cubs are not going to make the playoffs, you look at all the blown saves and the bullpen mishaps that the Cubs had, particularly early in the season. The second thing to me is the shutouts. You have to manufacture runs in games. Javier Assad goes out there and gives you the type of start that you need to win a game. You got to figure out a way to get the guys some support. You say what you want to say about, well, you know what? He doesn't do this or he doesn't do that. 5 2/3 innings, 3 hits and an earned run. That's enough. Smiley, Miller, good to see Miller back on track again. Armstrong back in there. Maybe he's a guy that you have on the team next year. Who knows? But you score 0 and you give up 2. A lot of times you score 2, you give up 2, you're going to win the game. And that's been the issue. So back-to-back shutouts for the Cubs. And, kind of just sitting here going, the schedule starting to kind of roll down here. What's the future? And we know that, and I said this before, the future isn't the playoffs. You got to go to LA to play the Dodgers on Monday. And then you play Chris Bryant and the Rockies. I mean, there's not enough wins. You'd probably have to win about every game to make the playoffs from here on out, and that's not going to happen. So I'm looking for the Cubs to eventually, and I've said this before, let's see what Owen Casey can do in the big leagues. Maybe let's see what Matt Shaw or James Triantos, put them in there. Let them get in there and just at least get a taste of what the future looks like. And if not, I mean, what are you waiting for? Spring training? You're just afraid that you're going to have to send them back to AAA? Who knows? But you got 20 games to try to get these guys some experience. You're not making the playoffs. It's cosmetic. If you're the first team not making the playoffs, it doesn't matter if you're the first team or you're the last place team because you didn't make the playoffs. And I think that's the bottom line. But I'm looking for Craig Counsell to put his imprint on this coaching staff. When he got hired, didn't bring anybody with him. He did go out and get Flash as his bench coach. I thought that was a great move. Love him. Ryan Flaherty's a great guy. Good to see him back in there and with the Cubs organization. But, all in all, try to finish the season over 500. Yeah. But I mean, I just think that for the Cubs, the most important thing is to get guys experience now and start to think about next year. Final game between the Cubs and the Yankees. I love this matchup, man. I mean, I guess it just goes back to Babe Ruth and the 32 World Series, like pointing out, calling his shot if it really happened. I saw a video where Babe was kind of like, they say it happened, so it happened. Who knows what really happened? But as far as history tells us, Babe Ruth called a shot in a World Series win against the Cubs at Wrigley Field. It's one of the things you love about Wrigley is it's the same exact stadium that Babe Ruth played in. And the Cubs and the Yankees, two really historic, two of the blue blood teams in baseball. And I love seeing these two teams together. Now, I wanted to talk about Anthony Rizzo before I give you the matchup. I know Anthony mentioned Riz. I remember Riz when the Cubs traded for him. I remember being around him, seeing him on the Cubs plane, just knowing the kind of person that he is. And how sad it was to see all those guys get traded. He's always been battling back issues. I know he's had other injuries, but, best of luck to him. I mean, to think that the four guys who were kind of the face of the franchise, right? Rizzo, Bryant, Baez, and Schwarber, that Schwarber would be the guy that's like the star of the bunch, and that Rizzo would probably be second. And I'd say Baez and Bryant are kind of tied for third, and it's a distant third as far as the success that they've had after leaving the Cubs. But really great moment at Wrigley when he came back. Cubs fans are the best. I could give a crap what anybody else says. We're the best fans. Like the love that we show our guys when they came back. How many times did we say, hey, win one, just win one before we die, and they got that done. So I'm ready for another one. I mean, honestly. But how far is this franchise away from winning another one? That's the big question that we have. So one former Yankee against the Yankees, Jameson Taillon. I thought the Yankees would go out and get Taillon at the break. They didn't do it. 9-8 record, 3.66 ERA. Garrett Cole, 6-3, 3.65 ERA. These are really big games for the Yankees. And for the Cubs right now, it's all about the cosmetics. Cubs are just 2 games over 500. And the Yankees right now, 22 games over in a battle in the American League. And like the standings for the Yankees, Baltimore and the Yankees are tied for first. And, both teams kind of coming down the stretch. The Orioles, the young team with a ton of talent. The Yankees, the star-studded team, Aaron Judge and Juan Soto and Anthony Rizzo now that he's back. So really interesting to see what happens there in the AL. Do you even want to win the division right now? I mean, because teams that won the division didn't really have a lot of success last year. but I'm thinking that you want to win it, right? Take the days off, get ready, and then gear up. The Yankees, I think the expectation there is that they're going to win the World Series. And if they don't, it's a failure. And I want the Cubs to be in that spot one day. I want the Cubs to be in a spot where I felt like last year when you heard them say, hey, you know what? We got close. We didn't do it, and they seemed to be okay with that. I didn't like that when David Ross wasn't brought back. It felt like a franchise that was saying, hey, we're not satisfied with coming up short. And I think that that's kind of where things are for the Cubs this year. There's nothing to be satisfied about when you don't make the playoffs. And the Yankees, they feel like there's nothing to be satisfied with if they don't win the World Series. And you see Joe Girardi, who I think is great on the Cubs, TV, but he was the manager. They lost in Game 7 to the Astros in the championship series in the AL, and they fired him. So it's just two perspectives on where you want to be and what you think a successful season is. And I think that the Cubs franchise needs to get a lot closer to the Yankees franchise as far as what is a successful season. But you guys tell me, get in the comments section, swing that out there. Great to talk to you guys. I will get back on here tomorrow. We'll do the same thing tomorrow, and we'll start gearing up. I'm going to start bringing some guests back on, start breaking things down, what the future looks like, give you my opinion on that. Want to hear from you guys in the comments section. Like and subscribe, comment. And thank you for being part of the Cubs baseball channel. We will talk to you again really soon. Go Cubs.